Member for Salmon Arm Shuswap.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Wildfire has become one of the important challenges facing communities across our province, especially in rural communities like those in the Shuswap and throughout the interior. In recent years, British Columbians have seen the devastating impact of wildfires. Entire communities have faced evacuation, families have lost homes, businesses have been disrupted. The economic and emotional toll has been enormous. In response to these growing risks, programs like FireSmart Community Funding and Supports Program have become an important part of our wildfire prevention strategy. FireSmart is built on a simple principle. Wildfire resistance requires preparation at every level: governments, communities, and individual homeowners. Through this program, local governments and First Nations can access funding for wildfire risk assessments, public education, community planning, and mitigation work designed to reduce the risk to homes and infrastructure being lost during wildfire events. Research shows that FireSmart measures can significantly reduce the likelihood of structure ignition. In other words, forest management and proactive mitigation matter, but this requires sustained investment and long-term planning. Budget 2026 includes approximately $15 million in additional funding for the FireSmart program. On the surface, this may sound great, but in reality, it functions largely as a short-term top-up to a program that was already running out of funds. Recent changes have also moved the program toward a more competitive intake process, limiting projects to a single-year funding cycle, and narrowed the scope of eligibility activities in some areas. Short-term grants simply do not provide the certainty required for long-term resilience. Demand for FireSmart funding far exceeds the available resources, with organizations competing against one another for very limited funding. And we must recognize that many of the communities facing the greatest wildfire risks are smaller rural communities. These communities often have limited staff capacity, fewer resources, and smaller tax bases, yet they are directly impacted. In regions like the Shuswap, communities are surrounded by forests that support tourism, recreation, and local economies, but those same forests also increase wildfire exposure. That is why the FireSmart programs are so important. They help communities reduce the risk before disaster strikes. They help homeowners understand what steps they can take to protect their properties, and increasingly, they also matter in another area: insurance. The Insurance Bureau of Canada and others have warned that wildfire risk is beginning to influence the availability and the affordability of home insurance in parts of the country. Insurers are increasingly looking at risk reduction measures when accessing coverage. And there's another point that must be made. British Columbia's climate policy is increasingly being driven by ideology rather than reality. Since the catastrophic 2017 wildfire season, wildfires in BC have been releasing enormous amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. In some years, wildfire emissions have exceeded BC's total annual emissions from transportation, industry, and energy combined. Yet, under current government accounting rules, wildfire emissions are excluded because they are labeled natural disturbances. But the atmosphere does not care about government frameworks. Carbon is carbon. While this NDP government focuses on emission reduction policies that target families, drivers, and small businesses, catastrophic wildfires are one of the largest sources of carbon released in severe years, yet they receive far less attention in climate planning than they should. A single severe wildfire season can erase years, even decades, of those reductions. If we truly care about the climate, then science tells us the solution must include serious forest management, fuel reduction, and wildfire prevention. That is why communities across this province continue to ask for long-term vision and investment necessary to ensure that communities, both large and small, have the certainty and the fire resilience ability. Thank you.